Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Cam Rogers Show. Happy Wednesday out there, March 14th, Pi Day. Cam Rogers coming at you. Check me out on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. A jam-packed program for the next hour. A lot to get through, starting with the free agency frenzy that is currently going on across the National Football League. I've got all of the latest signings, headlines, and news for all you all to get your morning started on this hump day. At the 15-minute mark, we'll transition into college basketball because March Madness is upon us. The real beginning is tomorrow. Of course, we have some play-in games tonight. USA Today bracketologist Shelby Mast will be joining me from his bracketology lair. Looking forward to that conversation. And then at the 30-minute mark, I will reveal my March Madness predictions, as well as talk about some fun facts that you guys should probably know as you make your last-minute decisions with your brackets. Then at the 45-minute mark, we'll wrap up the program with CBS Sports bracketologist Jerry Palm. I'll talk about some of the decisions that the committee made, as well as Jerry's bracket. Interesting note here, Jerry and Shelby both have the same national champion, so we'll talk about that later in the show. It's the Cam Rogers Show, episode 77, presented by Autolist. Head on to Autolist.com and save yourself the time when you're looking for that new or used car. Don't go to a million websites. Autolist has it all right there. Autolist.com, sponsoring the Cam Rogers Show today. Let's get into the NFL headlines here. We'll start things off with Carlos Hyde. He is going to become a member of the Cleveland Browns. It's a 3-year deal worth more than $15 million with $6 million in year one. I think this is a solid move for Cleveland. Obviously, Isaiah Crowell is moving on to the New York Jets. Wasn't a lot of indications that Isaiah was going to return to the Jets, so not so surprising that he is moving on. Meanwhile, for Hyde, I think he's a solid running back. He's got good burst, solid pass catching ability as well. I think he has 3 down back potential in Cleveland. But it all comes down to the draft for me with the Browns. Are the Browns anticipating on losing out on Saquon Barkley at number 4 overall? Because they have number 1 overall, right? And they have number 4. And maybe this signing indicates they're a little wary about Saquon perhaps falling to number 4. I can't believe we're actually using the word falling. But yeah, Saquon is potentially a number 1 overall pick, number 2, number 3. The signing of Carlos Hyde, though, tells me that the Browns are going to go quarterback number 1 overall. That cements that theory. I had in a recent mock draft that the Browns are going to get Saquon Barkley because I was all googly eyes over his performance at the NFL Combine. But now with Carlos Hyde coming to town and Duke Johnson already there in the backfield, I don't think it makes much sense to get Saquon at number 1. So the Browns are kind of drafting Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Baker Mayfield, whatever it is, and then crossing their fingers and then hoping that Saquon Barkley falls to them at number 4. But I don't know if he slips past the Colts or the Giants. Something to keep an eye on. But Carlos Hyde, a new running back in town for the Cleveland Browns, a team that is clearly trying to change things up with John Dorsey now the general manager. This guy is not holding anything back. He's going all out in free agency. So Carlos Hyde headed to Cleveland. Teddy Bridgewater will be going to the New York Jets. It's a 1-year deal with the Jets. Exact money has yet to be released. But the Jets are also bringing back Josh McCown on a 1-year, $10 million deal. So we have a couple of quarterback duels coming at you this offseason. And don't rule out the Jets drafting a quarterback in the draft as well, picking number 6 overall. I think Gang Green may not be done with selecting some new quarterbacks and bringing in some new faces here. The Jets, as I mentioned, also signing Isaiah Crowell, formerly of the Cleveland Browns. But as for Teddy Bridgewater, was sidelined for 14 months during his recovery, placed on the PUP list where he spent the first 6 weeks of the 2017 season, was medically cleared to return to practice, and from weeks 10 through 17, served as the backup to Case Keenum. You may remember his ceremonial appearance against the Cincinnati Bengals in Minnesota. I believe he threw an interception in that game, but who the heck cares? The guy came back from a brutal injury. For McCown now, this is very interesting because McCown set career marks for completions, yards, and touchdown passes last year. Also a season where he fractured his left hand in Week 14 against Denver. It makes me wonder now, is Josh McCown the favorite to be the starter in 2018? Is it Teddy Bridgewater? Maybe it's a rookie quarterback. Who will be starting for the Jets in 2018? Just open up your crystal ball, if you will. Try to project in Week 1 who will be under center. I've got your options: Josh McCown, Teddy Bridgewater, perhaps a rookie quarterback. Give me a laughing face for that. Or Bryce Petty, LOL. Or give us a wow face for Bryce Petty because, well, no way Bryce Petty is going to be the starting quarterback in Week 1, but I put that there for a couple of giggles. Sticking with the Jets here, Trumaine Johnson going to bolster that secondary, and full contract details aren't known just yet, but Johnson will get paid $15 million annually. Are you kidding me? I mean, Trumaine Johnson is a good cornerback, but he's not $15 million worth, so a big-time spending there for the Jets, and they have the salary cap space to do it, so it's not surprising that they overpaid here. And I think it's an important signing, considering Morris Claiborne is a free agent. He's probably not coming back, and Buster Skrine is not a key CB #1, so yeah, this was a very important signing for the Jets and kind of a supply and demand type signing. They were in high demand of a cornerback, and Trumaine Johnson ate up all the money there. So Johnson, physical cornerback, 6'1", over 200 pounds. Wasn't great last year for the Rams. Surrendered a 79.8 passer rating last season. Also ranked as the 68th best cornerback, according to Pro Football Focus. But you got Johnson along with safeties Jamal Adams and Marcus May. That forms a nice, solid, young secondary there. Not quite Jaguars or Rams level, but solid out there in the AFC East. So Trumaine Johnson headed to the New York Jets. A former Jet headed to Green Bay, Muhammad Wilkerson, reuniting with Mike Pettin, former defensive coordinator, worked with Wilkerson out there with the New York Jets, and Pettin is now the DC of the Green Bay Packers. So relative down year for Wilkerson in 2017. Of the 85 players with at least 300 pass rush snaps in 2017, Wilkerson ranked 69th with a pressure rate of just 5.4%. So not like the years of 2013 and 2015 when he registered 28.5 sacks. I mean, good amount of sacks there, but has registered just 8 quarterback takedowns in 28 games over the past 2 years for Wilkerson. So maybe a change of scenery was needed. Maybe motivation was a factor too. He might be more motivated to perform for the Green Bay Packers, a team that will be in the playoff hunt. The Tennessee Titans made a big splash last night. Dion Lewis headed to Tennessee to play for the Tennessee Patriots, it seems. 4-year deal, $20 million worth, $3 million in incentives. GM John Robinson, I'm telling you, he loves his Patriots. Robinson himself has the Patriot connections. You got Logan Ryan in that secondary already. You got Malcolm Butler coming on over. Mike Vrabel, 3-time New England Patriots Super Bowl victor, the new head coach out there. So it's all kind of turning to this Tennessee Patriots theme. Hit me up in the reaction poll. Yes, these are the Tennessee Patriots, or like they are getting there. I doubt anybody actually refuses that we're heading towards a Tennessee Patriot kind of feel here. Lewis, though, dynamic, elusive running back who will be a great complement to Derrick Henry. I think it's a really nice signing. No player rushed for more yards in the second half of last season, so Dion has a lot of momentum in his favor. And for Dion Lewis here, third most elusive running back in 2017, according to Pro Football Focus, will join fellow Patriot Malcolm Butler. And I want to talk a little bit more about Dion Lewis before we get to Sam Bradford for the Cardinals. I'll get to Mike Glennon later. But for Dion, he's going to complement Derrick Henry in a really important way, because we know what the Tennessee Titans like to do. Run the football, establish the line of scrimmage, play action down the field. The Titans are building a new offensive identity by cutting DeMarco Murray, ushering in Derrick Henry as that lead dog, and then signing Dion Lewis. So Dion Lewis here, I think, will be a very important piece to this puzzle for the Tennessee Titans, going through a lot of change here with some new pieces. Malcolm Butler, I talked about him, and a new role, a fresh role for Derrick Henry. The wide receiver position is a bit of a concern for me with the Titans, but they're in a good position there. All right, so let's talk about Sam Bradford first. He's going to the Arizona Cardinals. It's a one-year, $20 million deal, also a $20 million team option. The guy hasn't played a full season since 2012. But the Cardinals, they were in a position where they lost out on the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes. They knew they had to make some sort of move in free agency because at number 15 overall in the draft, they're not going to get a Rosen, Darnold, or Josh Allen. So I think this is a very important signing. Bradford suffered a non-contact left knee injury that eventually doomed his 2017 campaign. It was to the same knee where he had torn his ACL twice, though tests that time revealed no structural damage. I still think Bradford is one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the league if he can just stay on the football field, and that is the big kicker with him. It's interesting, Bradford has made $114 million over his career, but he missed half of the 2013 season, all of the 2014 season after tearing his ACL, so the history is there. Bradford has started 80 games with the Vikings, Rams, and Eagles. The Cardinals are in desperation mode for a starting quarterback with Carson Palmer retiring, Matt Barkley becoming a free agent, of course, as well as Drew Stanton. Neither of those guys are the answer for the Arizona Cardinals. So Sam Bradford heading on over, as well as this guy, I mentioned him, Mike Glennon. So he's going to be released once the new league year begins at 4 o'clock Eastern time. And then he's going to sign with the Arizona Cardinals. That is my understanding. The Bears have yet to officially cut Glennon, but Glennon's going to go to the Cardinals. Has thrown a career 34 touchdown passes to 20 interceptions in 25 NFL games, 22 starts in all. And you may recall the Bears signed Glennon to a 3-year, $45 million contract in May of 2017. Only 19 of that was guaranteed. But yeah, you may recall how that all went down. Not too well. Glennon didn't really last long for the Chicago Bears. So we're looking at perhaps a Sam Bradford, Mike Glennon training camp quarterback duel in the Big Toaster. How about that? Very interesting stuff there. All right, the white whale of free agency, Kirk Cousins, headed to the Minnesota Vikings. He's going to be whining and dining with Vikings personnel tonight. And, of course, that will be once the new league year begins. So, hey, right at the dinner table, right next to that fantastic ribeye steak, Kirk Cousins could have his contract, and he could sign it this evening to make it official that he'll become a member of the Minnesota Vikings. It's a 3-year, fully guaranteed contract, according to reports, $84 million. Totally revamping the quarterback market, which is unbelievable to see. So during his time as a Redskins starter, he has ranked 4th in passing yards, 6th in passer rating, 7th in total QBR, and 8th in total touchdown passes. So, I mean, he's got a good resume. Are the Vikings Super Bowl 53 contenders? That's what I want to hear from all of you out there. Hit me up in the comments section. Is it time to buy in to the Minnesota Vikings? I talked about how before the playoffs started, they were going to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, I looked like an idiot because they stunk up the joint against the Eagles. But Case Keenum is Case Keenum. This is Kirk Cousins, who I think is more of a gamer, more of a winner, more of a proven resume than, say, a Case Keenum. So I think the Vikings are in a very real position to compete for a Super Bowl. Hit me up in the comments section. I know the Saints, the Rams are up there as well. Don't sleep on the 49ers either. All right, Drew Brees. There were some rickety feelings that maybe he was not going to stay in New Orleans. Everybody can breathe a sigh of relief. He is remaining with the Saints. It's a 2-year deal worth $50 million. Second year is a team option. And the contract is an interesting one because apparently, according to reports, it was a take it or leave it kind of offer from the New Orleans Saints. So if Brees didn't like what was thrown on the table, there very well could have been a scenario where he was headed to the Minnesota Vikings instead. So Brees has recorded 5,000-yard passing seasons, by far the most in NFL history, has thrown for at least 30 touchdowns in 9 of the last 10 seasons. The exception, of course, was last year, thanks to Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara getting it done at the running back position. But Drew Brees going to stay with the New Orleans Saints. There were reports out there that the Vikings were calling up Drew Brees' agent. That's why I talked about the Vikings a little bit ago. And so some teams were offering some big-time contracts for Drew. And in 2012, you may recall, Drew Brees got a little frustrated with the New Orleans Saints leadership because contract negotiations weren't going in the right direction. And I thought, and I almost foresaw a scenario where Brees was going to get frustrated yet again and maybe this time around look elsewhere. But the Saints did not let Drew Brees go into the new league year and test the open market because he's going to stay with the New Orleans Saints. And from a continuity standpoint, I think it's very important. And I think we could be heading towards a situation where it's the New Orleans Saints and the Minnesota Vikings meeting up again in the playoffs. I know it's only March, but it could be an NFC Championship game between the Saints and the Vikings, Kirk Cousins versus Drew Brees. I think that would be a really fun matchup. You have the Los Angeles Rams in the conversation as well, and a couple of other teams too. But the Saints, they're going to be interesting. Stay tuned for them. And Drew Brees is going to be staying with New Orleans, so very important for them. All right, those are your latest NFL headlines here on the Cam Rogers Show. Of course, we have March Madness upon us. The big-time games, the real tournament starts tomorrow. And I'm getting you guys all set with some of the greatest minds in the game. And it's Shelby Mast joining the program right now. USA Today bracketologist coming along for the ride here. Shelby, appreciate the time, sir. Are you excited?
I'm always excited. I love March Madness.
There's a lot to talk about, Shelby. We're going to start things off in the South region where there seems to be a lot of depth and a lot of teams to kind of pick apart here. I do want to start off with the news in terms of Virginia losing its sixth man, freshman DeAndre Hunter, with a broken wrist. Is that cause for concern with you?
Oh, I think so. He's an integral part of that team. And this team, poor Virginia, they've been snake-bit in the tournament the past few years due to injury or illness or whatever. They've had a key player go down, and I think that's kind of hampered them. This was their best chance, I think, to win a title. Now, I can't say no chance, but I'm feeling better about picking Arizona to beat them.
And we'll talk about your picks in a few moments here, Shelby. But sticking with this South region here, one game I'm really zoning in on is Kentucky taking on Davidson. And I'm, looking around, seeing the research, and a lot of experts out there are kind of buying into this Davidson upset kind of hype. What are your impressions of the Wildcats of Kentucky, and what do you think of this game here, 5 versus 12?
I've got Kentucky winning that. Davidson earned their way in the tournament, no doubt. They're a solid team. They didn't have a great year. They had a good year. But Kentucky seemed to put things together down the stretch. And with Calipari coaching these youngsters, they seemed to figure something out. I don't know what it was, but something clicked down the stretch. I can't pick Davidson to beat Kentucky, but I think it's going to be a solid game.
All right, Wildcats versus Wildcats on that one. Let's go to the West here, and I want to focus in on Gonzaga. A lot of people say Gonzaga's a little underseeded, and I think this is a sneaky team here, Shelby. What do you make of the Zags?
Zags are very good. I thought they were a little bit overseeded, actually, considering when you measure their resume against other teams in their general seed range. No doubt about it, they're good. They have Final Four experience now, something that they've never had before coming into the tournament. They don't have the same players back, but they've got a solid core that came back. That experience factor, I think, is going to help them. I don't know if they can get back to the Final Four, but I think they're going to be a tough out for sure.
All right, so Gonzaga taking on UNC Greensboro. Ohio State will take on South Dakota State, and that's one of my key games here in this region, Shelby. 5 and 12 matchup as well. Some people are buying into the Jackrabbits here, thinking that the Jackrabbits can upset the Ohio State Buckeyes. There you see the game Thursday, 4 o'clock Eastern time on TNT. Shelby, let me ask you about this game here. Do you see an upset from the Jackrabbits?
I came close to picking it. I think Ohio State is the better team, but South Dakota State has a win earlier this year at Ole Miss, and that's not a huge win, but for a school of that caliber to go on the road to the Southeast Conference and get a win, that's a big confidence builder for them. Plus, Ohio State hadn't played in a while. The Big Ten tournament was a week early, so they could be rested. They could be rusty. We'll see. I'm sure coaches put them through numerous drills to keep them fresh, lots of scrimmages to keep their mind on ready for a game situation. It won't surprise me one bit if South Dakota State wins this.
All right, Shelby, let's go to the East region here. We got Villanova as the top seed. The Cats, it seems, are feast or famine when they play in the NCAA tournament. What's it going to be this year? What's your makeup of Villanova?
I think they've got a nice team, obviously. They're a 1 seed. They've earned it. They've played well. They did have a couple of losses coming down the stretch. Maybe they're a little bit tired. You'll take out that title a couple of years ago, and they've been losers in the first weekend each of the past 3 or 4 tournaments, I believe. I think they can get past the first weekend on to the Elite Eight.
And there you see Villanova, top seed in the East region. They'll be taking on Bradford. Bradford won in their play-in game. One game I'm really watching here is Wichita State taking on Marshall. Greg Marshall is a great coach. He has Final Four experience. But at the same time, I'm seeing that maybe Wichita State and the Shockers could be prime for an upset here. What do we make of Marshall versus Wichita?
Marshall's a good team. They won at Mid-Tennessee State a couple weeks ago, and that almost essentially helped Mid-Tennessee State miss out on the tournament. Greg Marshall versus Marshall, I think that's an interesting matchup there. If they can get hot, they've got some solid players, but I expect Wichita State with their experience, that team that came back was a preseason favorite to get to the Final Four. They may not have lived up to those expectations, but no doubt about it, they're still very good.
All right, Shelby, so we have a graphic for the folks watching the program. Your Elite Eight, so let's pull it up on screen here. You've got Arizona and Cincinnati in the South, Villanova and Texas Tech coming out of the East region. We'll start with those 4 teams here. Tell me a little bit about Arizona and Cincinnati in the South here as they play each other according to your projections.
For whatever reason, this year just seems to me like it's going to be the team with the most talent wins and advances. Arizona has got a lot of NBA players on their roster. Cincinnati plays a very solid brand of defense. It can be a little bit boring at times. I think Arizona has more talent, NBA-type talent, than Cincinnati. That's going to be a solid matchup if that Elite Eight game happens.
Texas Tech, a team I like very much as well, Shelby. Let's go to the next 4 here. Xavier and UNC, the defending champs, coming out of the West, battling each other. You got Kansas and Duke, 1 and 2 in the Midwest. Are you buying into Xavier? Do you think they can be a legit threat in the tournament?
I think so, and I didn't necessarily peg them from the beginning, but when I just started filling out my bracket, that I went with my gut, and that's kind of the way it ended up. I was surprised that I ended up picking Xavier as well, but I think they're a good team. I've seen them play a lot of games this year. They played Villanova close. They couldn't get a win in either of those games, but they did play them tough, and they've got a nice, solid roster. I think they've got a real good shot, I think.
All right, Shelby, you've crunched the numbers and all of that jazz. You got your Final Four. We've got Arizona out of the South, Xavier in the West, Texas Tech in the East, Duke in the Midwest. What do you make of Texas Tech? I want to hear your thoughts on them because I actually have them in my Final Four as well. I think they're a good defensive team.
You are probably the only other person I've heard that has that. I was feeling a bit lonely on that one. I like the team. I like they've got a bunch of upperclassmen. The experience seems to help teams in the tournament. They may not have the tournament experience, but they've got years of experience playing together as a team. That's a big thing for me going into the tournament. Putting them against Duke, though, I think that's tough for them.
All right, let's go to the national championship here. Arizona versus Duke, 4 versus 2. You have the Wildcats out west winning the national championship. You talked a little bit about them. Said they have a lot of NBA players on that roster. So state your case on Arizona. What do you think?
Well, I actually have Duke winning it.
Oh, do you?
I'll talk about
that's my mistake.
I did. That's all right. When I did my preseason bracket for USA Today, I picked Arizona Duke in the finals, and I kind of been watching them both all year. I know Arizona's had their off-court issues, other distractions, but they seem to be whole right now. The whole team's there. Nobody's suspended. Everybody's healthy as far as I know. And I really, really want to see Marvin Bagley versus DeAndre Ayton. I think that is a heavyweight matchup that would be a really nice way to cap off this year.
Hey, no fake news here at the Cam Rogers Show. So Shelby's going with Duke winning the national championship, the number 2 seed there, taking down the Arizona Wildcats. Shelby, you're a busy man. I do appreciate you coming along for the ride here on the Cam Rogers Show, and wish you all the best as you watch your games.
Thanks for having me, Cam. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. Many thanks to Shelby for joining the Cam Rogers Show here today. One of the great minds in all of college basketball laying down his predictions there, so we thank him for joining the show. So that is the latest with Shelby. How about yours truly? What do I think is going to happen in March Madness? I've got my predictions as well, so let's go through them here. I've got my Elite 8 to start things off. So I've got Kentucky and Tennessee out of the South battling it out. Villanova and Texas Tech out of the East doing battle as well. And then to the South and East, the West and Midwest, Gonzaga battling Michigan, and then NC State. Yes, NC State taking on Michigan State in the Midwest. You got to get crazy with this bracket this year, ladies and gentlemen. I just have a feeling that's how it's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of parity, a lot of change, and I'm thinking NC State could be that crazy Cinderella-type team to make it all the way to the Elite 8. Do they get all the way to the Final Four? No, they do not. I have a trio of 3 seeds, as well as Kentucky making it to the Final Four. So no 2 seeds, no number 1 seeds, and I'll go team by team here. So Kentucky head coach John Calipari, 51-17 and 18 appearances. It's a young team. It's not like the Kentuckys of the last couple of years where they made some very deep runs with a very veteran type of squad, if you will. But they defend the glass really well, defend the 3-point shot very well as well. I have my concerns in terms of their own 3-point shooting. But the South region really isn't as scary to me as other people are making it out to be, especially with the news of the Virginia Cavaliers and losing their 6th man there. I think there's an opportunity here for Kentucky to make some noise. I'm not buying into Arizona all the way either, so I've got Kentucky as number 5, making it to the Final Four. I got to watch out there for the Cats. Kevin Knox is a true stud, freshman, 6'9", scoring 15.7 points per game, 5.4 rebounds per game as well. Kentucky riding some momentum, and I'm always watching momentum when I look at some of these teams that I'm making my picks. Kentucky has won 7 of its last 8 entering the NCAA tournament, including wins over 5 tournament teams. That's what I like to see when I'm doing my research. And look, opponents are shooting just 29.9% beyond the arc against Kentucky. That's 3rd in the nation in terms of the numbers there. As you see, Kentucky's recent tournament appearances. Death, Texas, and Kentucky making runs in the NCAA tournament. You saw them in 2014, making it all the way to the championship. 2012, of course, they won the national championship altogether. Elite 8 last year, losing to eventual champions, North Carolina, so not the worst thing in the world. Kentucky, I got them coming out of the South into the Final Four. Let's check in with the East. And Texas Tech. Shelby's got them making quite a run. I have them in the Final Four here, and you have a coach with not a lot of NCAA tournament experience. Chris Beard, 1-1 in 1 appearance. This marks the 16th NCAA tournament appearance in program history for the Red Raiders. They'll be looking to advance past the first round for the first time since 2005. So a little bit of adversity here for Texas Tech to kind of battle through. But senior guard Keenan Evans is a guy to monitor here. 17.5 points per game, really solid player. Has been dealing with turf toe. So that's the one concern I have with Keenan Evans. Haven't heard anything in terms of his status being in doubt, so I think he will be good to go. But something to monitor as you see Texas Tech's recent history in the tournament. It's been quite a while if you go past 2016. You have 2007, 2005, 2004, 2002. The list goes on. Not a lot of deep runs there. First round, second round, first round. Yeah, Sweet 16 appearance. So history not exactly on the side of Texas Tech. but I got them going pretty darn deep. They have one of the nation's top defenses, ranking 3rd in the country in terms of defensive efficiency. I think they'll outmuscle Purdue, by the way, and then take down Villanova in the Elite Eight. So, like Texas Tech a lot. The Michigan Wolverines coming out of the West. So I like them to make some noise. I'm a big fan of momentum, as I said. The Wolverines have won 9 in a row, punctuated by wins over Michigan State and Purdue to claim the Big Ten tournament title. You got Beeline, has one of the best defensive teams he's ever had as the head coach. Wolverines limit opponents to 63 points a game. They got a really well-balanced offensive unit than in years past. You got Mo Wagner leading the way in the scoring department. Duncan Robinson coming off the bench too, 9.6 points per game, has flourished in his role. And then Michigan is a team that will slow you down and then suffocate you defensively. They're number 5 in the nation in adjusted defensive rankings, and they turn you over too. They're 3rd nationally in steal percentage. So Michigan is aggressive. They're kind of like West Virginia, but the thing with Michigan is they score better than West Virginia. So that's why I have Michigan going to the Final Four and not WVU. All right, and then finally, Michigan State out of the Midwest. I am expecting ultimate chaos coming out of the Midwest region, and I think at the end of the day, the Spartans come out on top. I think an early exit from Kansas could happen. I think a big run from NC State is going to happen. As you saw, I have them going to the Elite Eight. NC State has some fantastic guards that shoot really well. And if you have really hot guards that are just riding momentum, that spells good news for you in March Madness. So NC State, sneaky team, guys, that I think you should really look at when you're filling out your brackets. I think the Spartans will beat Duke in the Sweet 16 and obviously take on NC State and then beat the Wolfpack in the Elite Eight. So Michigan State, a team I absolutely love. And in terms of the national championship, I've got Michigan State beating the Michigan Wolverines 3 seed versus 3 seed in the national championship. Talk about headlines, talk about TV ratings, just from a Michigan standpoint. Led by Tom Izzo, the Spartans, 47-19 in 20 appearances. Some names to monitor here with the Spartans. Cassius Winston, sophomore, 12.6 points per game. Pretty darn good player. You got Miles Bridges, of course, the 6'7 sophomore, 16.9 points per game. Has a really good free throw percentage, 88.3. Michigan State leads the nation in assists, blocks, rebounding margin, and field goal percentage defense. I'm in. I'm buying in. That's all I need to see. I like Michigan State a lot. Perhaps the best team Tom Izzo has ever had at the school. So, like this squad a lot. I got them beating the Michigan Wolverines. If you're playing in my bracket league, well, I guess I just gave you a little insight into who I'm going with. So, there you go. Michigan State will be cutting down the nets. Book it. All right, so I got some fun facts to get through as well, talking about the March Madness. And how about this? There are 7 coaches with top 4 seeds to have never made a Final Four. Here are just 4 of them that are notable. Tony Bennett, number 1 overall seed, Virginia. You got Chris Mack, right, head coach of Xavier. Matt Painter, head coach of Purdue. And then Mick Cronin of Cincinnati. None of those guys have been to a Final Four. And just going down the list further, Chris Beard of Texas Tech, although his experience is shorter with Texas Tech. Sean Miller of Arizona, never been to a Final Four. Bruce Pearl of Auburn, same can be said there. All right, some March Madness facts here. Highest scoring team in the field, Villanova. The lowest scoring team, Bradford. So Bradford's continuing on. They won their play-in game last night. So, yeah, they're probably not going to make it very far. They're a 16 seed too, so, yeah. Just something to monitor with them, though. Fastest team in the field, the Oklahoma Sooners, the 10 seed, taking on Rhode Island. A lot of people out there thought, why the heck is Oklahoma in the tournament? Well, Trae Young obviously is fun to watch, and they have some good resume victories from the beginning point of the season, so there's that. Meanwhile, the slowest team in the field. Virginia Cavaliers, this is not surprising at all because, well, they play slow, grind it out, ground and pound kind of play. I like Virginia as a team, but with the news of their sixth man getting hurt, that concerns me, and that's why I think Kentucky actually can get out of that region as a number 5 seed. So some fast facts in terms of some of the numbers. We got some more to get through here. Best free throw shooting team, Davidson. Sometimes free throw shooting is super crucial in March Madness, especially when you move on into later rounds and the scores get tighter, fouls matter a lot more. Davidson takes on Kentucky in that first round. It's a 5 versus 12 matchup. Worst free throw shooting team, New Mexico State. And everybody's like buying into New Mexico State to like make some crazy run here. They're thinking that they're going to beat Clemson, and I understand that. But can they beat Auburn or even Charleston? I don't know, but definitely not Auburn. So if New Mexico State takes on the Tigers, the run could be over there, especially because they're the worst free throw shooting team in the field. Best three-point shooting team. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't expect this. Purdue, the Boilermakers, a team that really eats up the glass, does a good job on the defensive side in terms of rebounding. They have really tall, lean players. Didn't expect them to be the best three-point shooting team, so really interesting note there. How about the worst one? I did expect this. The Texas Longhorns. That's a team that plays grinded out kind of basketball on the offensive and defensive sides, respectively, and so a team that you can't really rely on in terms of making it rain from beyond the arc, but obviously something to monitor with Texas. They, of course, have a matchup against Nevada, a team that is dealing with its fair share of injuries. So a 10 seed, Texas taking on a 7 seed, Nevada there in the South region. Some more fun facts. So this is the 80th NCAA tournament. That's like a celebratory moment, right? I can't believe I'm actually just hearing about this too. I had no idea it was the 80th NCAA tournament. Did anybody else know that? Because I didn't really hear it during the selection show either. 6-1 odds for Villanova's chances to win the title. So the Wildcats of Villanova are the favorites to cut down the nets, the 2016 national champions. I believe it is a good portion of my bracket league has Villanova. At least that's what I'm hearing. So if anybody's playing in that, keep an eye out there. But a good amount of CBS brackets are picking Villanova. In fact, 28%. That's the highest among any other collection in the CBS Sports Bracket Challenge. How about this number? 17. Kansas has won 17 games against teams in the field, and the next best is 14 with Virginia, followed by Villanova and UNC with 12. But for Kansas, I have them with an early exit. I talked about how it's going to be chaos in the Midwest. I think there's a potentiality for them to lose to NC State in the Sweet 16, or actually in the second round, that is, and then NC State goes on this crazy run. I'm seeing chaos in the Midwest. I don't know about you guys. But 17 wins against teams in the current field for Kansas, pretty darn good. Some more fun facts here. How about this? No team has lost their first conference tournament game and then gone on to win the national championship. So you should be suspicious of the following teams, folks. Auburn, Ohio State, Florida, and Miami. All of those teams won their first game in their conference tournament. So history says they're not going to capture the national championship. 87.5, that's UVA's win percentage against teams in this field. So you want to talk about wins for Kansas with 17. Talked about how Virginia has 14. That's a pretty darn good win percentage against teams in the current field. But again, that percentage was with some of the healthy rosters that they had earlier this season. Not the case right now, losing their sixth man and actually winning a couple of awards there in the ACC too. 14 is the number for Gonzaga. That's their win streak. That's the longest in the field. So you can talk about Michigan with momentum and all these teams. Gonzaga is the team that I'm really watching out for because I've talked about how much I love momentum and the ability to make some noise in the tournament. Gonzaga, a big team, not as good in terms of on paper in years past, but I still think it's a team to monitor here as you go through your brackets. Gonzaga playing out of the West, and they'll be taking on UNC Greensboro to start things off, and then the winner of Ohio State and South Dakota State. Two very winnable games, might I add. Here's the number here at the bottom of your screen. 63 total wins for Tom Izzo, Mike Krzyzewski, and John Calipari in the last 8 NCAA tournaments. So we've got some big-time brand names going at it here as head coaches in the tournament. Izzo, Krzyzewski, and John Calipari, just storied careers, and we'll see if they can build upon those wins. 63 is the number as we stand right now. So some of these bracket games out there let you create like 25, 15, more than one bracket, right? What is the possibility here to cover every single bracket, mathematically speaking? The odds are insane. So here is the number. Here is the exact number of amount of brackets that you can possibly make in March Madness. Are you ready? I'm actually going to pronounce the number. It's 9 quintillion, 223 quadrillion, 372 trillion, 36 billion, 854 million, 775,808 possible brackets. Unbelievable stuff. So we rounded it to the whole number to the best we could. But that is an unbelievable number. So yeah, what we're saying is the odds are definitely against you in terms of possibly nailing a perfect bracket. But I know Warren Buffett is out there offering like $1 million a week to his employees or something like that. But there you go. That's the number of possible brackets in March Madness. You're watching the Cam Rogers Show here, presented by AutoList. You want to save yourself the time when you're looking for that fantastic new or used car? Head on to Autolist.com. Get it done today. That's where you can get all of your shopping done in one place. So don't waste your time going to the dealership, surfing on Google, all of that stuff. Autolist.com has you covered, and we thank them for sponsoring the Cam Rogers Show here today. Let's circle back, take a look at my Final Four one more time if you're just tuning into the program. I've got a couple of interesting teams here. Kentucky, the 5 seed, coming out of the South. They will be in the Final Four. Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, a 3 seed coming out of the East. I've got Michigan. I'm riding the Michigan Wolverine wave here, coming out of the West. They will be in the Final Four. Michigan State out of the Midwest. And I want to talk about some of these teams a little further here for those just tuning into the program. So for Kentucky, a young team, not quite like the teams of years past, but they are so good at defending the 3. They are so good on the glass. My concern is shooting the 3, but I think they can actually get out of the South okay. It's really not all that daunting. I'm not a big fan of Tennessee, although I have them going into the Elite 8. Not a big fan of Cincinnati. In fact, I'm sick of Cincinnati. Stop trying to make the Bearcats happen. It won't happen for them. Meanwhile, for Virginia, the news of the injury there is concerning for me. And I already had them with a somewhat earlier exit than most people projected. And now it kind of cements things for me with the news there. So Kentucky, a team I really like coming out of the South. Meanwhile, out of the East, Texas Tech. So for the Red Raiders, they have Keenan Evans, who I like so much. Senior guard, 17.5 points average, 3.2 assists per game, also averaging a steal per game as well. The only concern with me in terms of Evans is his turf toe. So if he can be okay with that and it doesn't linger over and over throughout the tournament, then I will be confident in the Red Raiders to make some noise. Florida, St. Bonaventure, whoever wins that game has no chance against Texas Tech. No chance. So I think actually the path really isn't all that bad. It's once you get to Purdue, where I think it gets a little tougher. I think they take down Purdue, and then I think they actually make some noise big time and take down the Villanova Wildcats, the favorites to win the national championship. So Texas Tech there, I got them in the Final Four here on the Cam Rogers Show. Michigan as well, and Michigan State. Of course, you saw I have the Michigan State Spartans winning the national championship. All right, folks, you're watching the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. I am Cam Rogers, and we thank you for coming along for the ride here on the program, ladies and gentlemen, as we break down March Madness with one of the great minds in all of the industry. He is back, Jerry Palm, bracketologist for CBS Sports. Jerry, I appreciate the time, sir. I know it's a busy schedule. How are we doing?
Fine, how are you?
Doing fantastic, Jerry. And, you know, I do want to start things off with staying in the region where we got Rhode Island and Oklahoma doing battle in the Midwest. And I first off want to ask you about the decision of the committee to put Oklahoma into the field. Did you disagree with that?
No. You know, if you pay attention to what the committee says is criteria, they're an easy team to include. I mean, they're not going to get a great seed, of course, but they did way too much positive in the first half of the season for the losing at the end of the year, the bad stretch that they were on for really about a month, to undo all of that. And the committee has always said it's not how you finish. It's your entire body of work. Games in November and December mean just as much as February and March. Some people disagree with that. Some people choose to ignore it. But if that's their criteria, you have to take Oklahoma over some of the teams that were left out.
And of course, folks saw on the graphic there, Michigan State in that Midwest region too. And Jerry, I want to get some sort of confirmation from you, because I am picking the Spartans to win the national championship. Am I crazy for doing that?
Not at all. No, I think the three most talented teams in this tournament are Duke, Michigan State, and Arizona. None of them are one seeds because they didn't have the kind of season that merited one seeds. But all three of those teams, I would have put all three of them in the Final Four if I could. But I can't, because Duke and Michigan State are going to play, if they do, in a Sweet 16 game, which is at least 2 rounds sooner than that game should be played.
All right, so there's Michigan State out of that Midwest region. One game I'm really zoning in on, and I mentioned it, the Oklahoma Sooners. They're taking on the Rams of Rhode Island. It's a 7 versus 10 matchup, and Trae Young is going to be so fun to watch. We can talk about Trae Young till the sun goes down. But what do you make of Rhode Island here? A sneaky good team. They could make some noise, right?
They could. I'm a little concerned with how they finished the season. They kind of limped at home, although they did get to the A-10 tournament final. They lost badly to St. Joseph's on their senior day by 30 points, and then they followed that up with a road loss to Davidson, and then Davidson beat them again in the conference tournament. So I'm a little bit concerned with their run of play, although Oklahoma, to me, is still significantly worse. And I do like them to beat Oklahoma. But, you know, Trae Young versus their guards, you know, E.C. Matthews in particular, I think it's going to be an interesting matchup because, obviously, Trae Young is terrific, but Rhode Island's backcourt is pretty good, too.
Meanwhile, we've got Kansas as a top seed this year, of course, and I don't know, Jerry. I'm getting the sense that maybe the Jayhawks could be a little vulnerable here in the tournament. What's your makeup of Kansas?
Well, I think they got a pretty good draw to get to the Elite Eight. We'll see what happens after that. But I like Kansas. They're a different Kansas team than we've seen in the past, especially in the sense that they don't really have a significant post presence. You know, they're very much more perimeter-oriented than usual. But, you know, if they don't play a team that can take advantage of that, it may not matter that much. Their center missed the Big 12 tournament. They still won it. And they got some pretty good play out of D'Souza, who has been really, you know, no factor since joining the team in the middle of the season. But he gave them some pretty good minutes and was pretty productive. So, you know, they may have found their solution to that. We'll have to see how the tournament plays out. But Kansas is fine, and it's going to take a good game by somebody to beat him. But they didn't do him any favors putting him in the same region and where they might have to face Duke or Michigan State.
All right, of course, and you have Kansas facing off against Duke. We'll talk about that matchup later in the show here, Jerry. But, of course, you got Auburn taking on Charleston, which is a sneaky, interesting game here. A lot of folks like an upset to go down, especially with the Tigers struggling of late. Could Auburn be a candidate for an early exit as people fill out their brackets here last minute?
Well, I picked that, so I guess put me in that crowd. And Mike, it's really, I mean, I think Charleston's a good team, but as much as anything, when I pick an upset, it's usually about the higher seed more than the lower seed. It's something about the higher seed that has me concerned. And in Auburn's case, it's their run of play since they lost McLemore. They just haven't been the same. They haven't been terrible or anything like that, but they just haven't been quite as good. And as a result, just based on the team as it's constructed now, a 4 seed is probably too high. And that's why I like Charleston in this game, because obviously for a team like Charleston, you get a game like this in the NCAA tournament. It's the highlight of these the careers of these young men.
Let's go out west here, Jerry, where we have Xavier as the #1 seed in that region. You've got them going to the Elite Eight. So you like the Musketeers to make a little bit of a run here. What's your makeup of this #1 seed?
Yeah, I really like this team. I think it's well balanced, even though Trayvon Blewett is the star, and he's really an All-American kind of player. I still think they've got pretty good balance. They're really well coached. They get after you on both ends of the floor, and really few teams play harder than Xavier, and there's a couple others like Cincinnati and Purdue, and Virginia. I mean, where they just go after you all the time and hardly ever take a possession off. And Xavier is one of those teams, and I really like the grittiness of Xavier to go along with the talent that it took to become a #1 seed.
And then in this region, too, one of my key games, which I think could be an upset here, Miami taking on Loyola of Chicago. The Canes didn't look good in the ACC tournament, so I'm thinking Loyola, Chicago. The Ramblers could make some noise. What do you think of this matchup, 6 versus 11?
Yeah, I like Loyola as well. And one of the reasons why I like Loyola is this is a team that has already won a game against this caliber of opposition. They went to Florida and beat Florida on the road, and that's another 6 seed. Florida's another 6 seed. So Loyola already knows how to win this game. And that really does a lot for the confidence of a team that is new to the NCAA tournament. They haven't been since 1985. So success at this level is still new to them, and I do tend to shy away from those teams in this event. But because they've already won at Florida, I give them more of a chance than I would someone else in their situation.
All right, Jerry, so let's take a look at your Elite Eight here. We have a graphic for the folks watching the program. So we've got Arizona and Cincinnati coming out of the South, Villanova, Purdue out of the East, and we're going to start things off with talking about these 4, this collection of 4 here, Zona, Cincinnati, Villanova, and Purdue, and more specifically Cincinnati, a grinded-out defensive team. Is this the year they really can make a big-time run?
Absolutely, and this is another team that, and they are no fun to play against. They're no fun to prepare for. They're no fun to play against. They defend the heck out of you. They have offensive weapons as well. Gary Clark is a particularly talented player. But they fight you. They get in there. They get physical with you. They will get after you. And that's what I really like about Cincinnati. And that's actually kind of what makes the Cincinnati-Xavier rivalry so much fun to watch in the regular season, because they have the same style, really. But Cincinnati is very tough mentally and physically, and it's got I think it's a draw that gives them an opportunity to get to at least the Elite Eight.
All right, next slate of 4 here in your Elite Eight, Jerry. We got Xavier, UNC, Kansas, and Duke. We kind of previewed a little bit of Kansas versus Duke, so let's talk about that matchup. Boy, would that be fun for the headlines, huh?
Well, I think that Marvin Bagley is the answer for Duke in this matchup, because I don't know who Kansas has that can guard him. They can't put their stoke on him because he's not athletic enough. I don't really know who can guard Marvin Bagley for Kansas. And the perimeter, though, for Kansas, I think is an advantage for Kansas. And the perimeter game is going to keep them in it. But I think that Duke, there's just too much talent on the floor. 2 great coaches too, but I go with talent. When in doubt, go with the more talented team, and Duke is the more talented team.
And then you have Xavier taking on UNC, so the defending champs battling the Musketeers. I want to ask you here in terms of the comparisons of this current UNC team to, of course, the national championship team last season.
Yeah, well, they're different. I think they're probably a little more perimeter oriented this year. But I like North Carolina. The Carolina hasn't been as consistent as probably they could be, which is why they're a 2 and not higher. But You know, they had a really good year. They beat Duke twice. I mean, they're a very capable team. And the reason I pick them over Xavier in this game isn't so much a talent difference, because I think they're really pretty equal. It's experience in this situation. North Carolina knows how to win this game because they do it relatively often. And last year, of course, they're the defending champion. So that's why I like Carolina in this game. But I went back and forth on it quite a bit before I settled on Carolina. That was probably the toughest game for me to pick.
All right, and then with that, we've got the Final Four for Jerry Palm. Number 4, Arizona, then UNC. We got Purdue and Duke. So a trio of 2 seeds, a 4 seed, no number 1 seeds in the Final Four here. And Jerry, I want to ask you this here, because you've, of course, been a student of March Madness for quite some time. And so does this seem like a year where we could see a lot of parity? And when you're making your brackets, you got to get a little creative.
Well, certainly the regular season would indicate that. I mean, we had, 2 or 3 top 10 teams losing pretty much every week. Mm-hmm. It was a very chaotic regular season. It sort of stabilized right at the end. But, we had a very turbulent regular season that could make for a turbulent NCAA tournament. And now we have news that the 6th man on the number 1 overall seed, Virginia, the 6th man of the year in the ACC, is going to miss the tournament with a broken arm or a broken wrist, and that's a huge blow to them. Of all the 1 seeds that I left out of the Final Four, the one that I am probably most concerned about missing on is Villanova, because I think they at full speed, full health, which they finally are, they might be the most consistent team in the group.
Okay, Jerry, let's go to the national championship game. It's Arizona versus Duke. You have the Blue Devils cutting down the Nets, the number 2 seed coming out of the Midwest. They're going to have to beat Kansas to get there, but you have them winning it all. What do you make of Duke?
Well, I mean, again, I'm just going with talent here. These are 2 of the 3 most talented teams in the country, and when in doubt, go with the more talented teams. I would love to see, personally, a Marvin Bagley versus DeAndre Ayton matchup in any game. In this case, it would have to be a national championship game. 2 of the best players in college basketball, maybe the top 2 picks in next year's draft, and I just think that would be a fantastic matchup. But I just think that those are 2 of the 3 best teams, and if you've got Duke and Arizona, or if you've got Michigan State in there somewhere, obviously you can't have both Michigan State and Duke. I just think that those teams, the talent is ready to shine on those 3 teams in this tournament. And I just think it's a shame that they aren't all in different regions.
Jerry Palm, bracketologist here of CBS Sports, joining the Cam Rogers Show today. Jerry, always gracious with your time. Really do appreciate it. Wish you all the best.
All right, thank you.
All right, Jerry Palm joining the program here. Many thanks to him and Shelby Mass for giving their thoughts in terms of what's going to go down in the bracket. Cam Rogers coming at you here on the Cam Rogers Show. If you missed any of the program, don't you worry. We are going to loop it for you. Check me out on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. Get the podcast version as well. Chatsports.com/Cam Show. That's how you can download the video podcast on iTunes. So if you're on Team iPhone, get that done. There is the link at the bottom of your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy March Madness. I'll be back on Friday morning, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Until then, enjoy your Wednesday and enjoy your Thursday. Take care.